And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to iCritic Live, the show where we talk about movies, pop culture, and life in between. I am Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and I am also your host for this evening. And I am also the host for the Entrepreneur Show because we are actually live streaming on the Entrepreneur channel as well. I know that movies don't have a whole lot of interest to people on that channel, but what the heck? It's a fun topic. Why not just put it on there? Get away from the dreariness of like credit cards and gig economy and things like that. And today's episode has been very highly requested from several viewers of the channel. And so we are finally going to do this. We are going to actually, well, maybe not rank, but we are going to definitely grade all of DreamWorks Animation's feature films. Now, DreamWorks premiered or came out as a competitor to Disney when Jeffrey Katzenberg did not get a job promotion at Disney that he felt he deserved. And as a result, he went to form DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen. In fact, that's what the SKG stands for: Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen. Spielberg would run the movie division, Katzenberg would run the animation division, and Geffen would run the music division. Basically, everybody was doing what they were best at. Now, DreamWorks as its own independent studio technically failed. DreamWorks still exists in some capacity, but I know DreamWorks Records was basically the first to shutter. Then DreamWorks Animation was so much more successful than the live action division that they ended up spinning off into their own publicly traded company, and then they got bought out by Comcast. I believe the live action arm of DreamWorks also got bought out at that point. So anyway, that was the formation of DreamWorks, and even though it took time, they eventually got their footing to be not only one of the big competitors against Disney, but one of the major animation players that are still making movies to this day, with their most recent film getting an Oscar nomination, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Now, this tier list that I found has all of the DreamWorks movies that I am aware of, with the exception of one, and that appears to be Joseph, King of Dreams, because Joseph, King of Dreams was not considered one of DreamWorks' main movies because it was a direct-to-video film. And I don't think they ever really made another direct-to-video film ever again, outside of a few holiday specials and things like that. So that's not on this list, but for the record, if I did list it, I would probably list it as an A. It was actually a very, very good direct-to-video movie. Definitely much better than anything Disney was doing at the time. So I'll just make that clear for the record. And now, this person seems to put them in the order of release as close as possibly can. And we've got 6 rankings here. We've got S, which I consider to be absolute must-watch DreamWorks, and F, which I consider to be pretty much garbage. Like, you can totally miss it. You don't have to watch it at all. And I should mention that, honestly, some of my opinions might surprise you. Some of them might surprise you. And, I mean, you always open yourself up when you do these sorts of lists where I'm going to put something really high on the list that some people feel should not be that high. And then I'm going to put some movies low on the list that some people feel that should not be that low. In fact, when I did this for the Disney thing, there was one guy who was absolutely flabbergasted that I would rate Frozen an S while I would give Treasure Planet a B. Even though those are both good grades, and it's like, okay, they're both good movies. I just like one better than the other. But that just happens for these things, so you just have to be prepared for them. At any rate, we've given people a few minutes to come to the live stream. If more people want to come, let's do this. And the first one is Ants. And the funny thing is, Ants is normally known as a movie, the lesser movie of A Bug's Life. A lot of people I've noticed tend to like A Bug's Life more than Ants. I'm not one of those people. I actually think Ants is a classic. I give it an A. I actually think it's much better than A Bug's Life. I think the characters are way more witty and funny than in A Bug's Life. I think that the concept of ants about a worker ant who's basically just part of this machine of the colony and not having his own identity is much more interesting than the Akira Kurosawa Seven Samurai remake that A Bug's Life was. The only thing that A Bug's Life had better, in my opinion, was the animation. Otherwise, yeah, I think the voice acting was better in Ants. Give me Henry Gregson's score over Randy Newman's any day of the week. So DreamWorks, in my opinion, started out extremely strong by releasing Ants. And then they afterwards released their first true classic, The Prince of Egypt, which actually kind of feels like something that Disney might have made at some point if they were willing to be more mature. Like, we saw that Disney tried to be a little bit mature with The Hunchback of Notre Dame to mixed results, and they haven't quite been that ambitious again. I could have easily seen like a ambitious Disney making The Prince of Egypt, but DreamWorks made it instead, and so there you go. But I think this was also DreamWorks' first Oscar, like for the best song. So, you know, good for them that they got off strong. And then I think that they kept coming. The Road to El Dorado, well, not perfect. This is nowhere near a perfect movie, but it was a lot of fun. And it had some gorgeous animation, and the colors were great. Apparently, this was supposed to be like a series of Road 2 movies, but this one underperformed, so we didn't get those. I'm really disappointed because I could have definitely seen this having franchise potential, and with how popular movies are now, I wonder if a sequel would not actually do better in today's market. I just don't know, but we will have to see. Now, this next one, even though it's a DreamWorks film, it's not really a DreamWorks film, and that is Chicken Run. And yeah, I put this one way at the top. Aardman Animation did this. I mean, it's basically a spoof of The Great Escape, but man, what a spoof it is. It's really funny, super clever. It actually even gets funnier with each subsequent viewing and as you get older. Chicken Run was just like lightning in a bottle that we'll probably never really get again, but there you go. And then you have Shrek, which I like Shrek quite a bit. I mean, I know that some people say that the pop culture references have not held up very well, but I still think the riff on the Disney movie still works, and it's still kind of a unique story where it's like, yeah, it's an inner beauty story that has aged very well in some regards, and even though it's kind of just turning the fairy tale on its head, it provided the fairy tale thing a good whoop, genre, if you will, a good whooping. And it still is great to this day. So then we have Spirit, and in my opinion, this is kind of their first movies. I mean, I'm not going to criticize it too much because you know what? It's a G-rated family film. It's got pleasant enough songs. It's got pleasant animation. It actually is almost completely different when you look at these other DreamWorks movies. Like, it has like a quietness to it that most DreamWorks films do not have later in life. And so I almost have to appreciate it on that level alone. But that said, it's just an okay film. It's okay. Then you have Sinbad, and I think I'll put that in B. I actually liked it more than most people. I thought that the action sequences were really good. I thought Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones had good chemistry. I actually liked the villain quite a bit. Like the witch was very interesting villain in my opinion, and really quite threatening. So I don't think the story was anything special, hence why it's in the B category. But I like Sinbad. It's really kind of a shame that it kind of brought the whole hand-drawn animation thing for DreamWorks to a close. This movie apparently almost bankrupted DreamWorks, so it's a shame. Now, Shrek 2 definitely saved it, and I would put this in the S tier. I know a lot of people say that Shrek 1 is the best. I don't agree with that. I think Shrek 2 is the best. I think it had the best story. Even though it had more pop culture references than the first one, the whole emotional core and the movie working relies less on them, ironically. And Puss in Boots was a great addition to the movie. In fact, he was so good in the Shrek series. He obviously got his own spin-off movies. It's actually kind of strange to think that he wasn't even there from the very beginning. Like, he was kind of brought in as a new character in 2 and added so much to the whole chemistry of the cast that he became a starring player in his own right. Now we have Shark Tale, and you know where I'm going to put this one. I'm going to put this in an F. I just don't think Shark Tale is very good. Like, not even close, if I'm being honest. I mean, I know it's a popular thing to crap on Shark Tale, but it really doesn't have a whole lot of a leg to stand on. The animation isn't even particularly good because some of the characters, especially the Will Smith fish, look so ugly. I appreciate some of the voice acting. Jack Black, he always takes his voice acting role seriously. He doesn't just go in and sound like Jack Black. He actually creates new characters for the most part. And Martin Scorsese does have a unique voice, and I know he's too busy making masterpieces every year, but it's almost kind of a shame that he didn't become a voice actor at some point. He's really good at it. So I don't like Shark Tale very much. I also am kind of miffy on Madagascar. I think it's okay. I think it's, I don't know if I really like the animation much. I know they made like a big deal about, oh, we got the squish and squash animation. We finally got the Looney Tunes style figured out. And it's like, really, you spent tens of millions of dollars making a technique that traditional animation had mastered years ago. So I don't know. The movie was also kind of funny. Like, I always felt like Marty should have been the main character, but it's not. It's Alex. And, you know, the concept that they go in Madagascar and the question of, you know, what's the lion going to eat when the master's not around to feed him anymore? I mean, what if Alex had actually eaten Marty? Imagine the places this movie could have gone. I think this movie was way too family friendly to really capitalize on the premise. And I also have to state that I personally feel that I Like to Move It is one of the most annoying songs in history, right next to That's the Way, I Like It. I can't stand these songs. Not even close. Okay, then you have another Aardman production, Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I'm obviously going to put that in A. It won an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. By the way, I forgot to mention Shrek was the first movie to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, so historical there too. Obviously, Wallace and Gromit is just classic. What they do with Gromit is always great, and this was no different. And you definitely take a risk when you take like a series that's known for 30-minute shorts and turning it into feature film. Like, can you actually do that and still be entertaining? And you found out that you could do it with The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Now, then you have Over the Hedge, and I'm putting that as a C. It's pretty average. I liked where they were going with it. I liked the idea that the wild animals basically get a taste of human food, and then they can't go back to leaves and sticks and things like that, and so they have to go for human food. But I kind of felt like it didn't go hard enough with that premise. Like, it really seemed to want to be a satire of people's unhealthy eating habits and things like that, but it didn't quite go all the way, in my opinion. So yeah, average for Over the Hedge. Now, Flushed Away, I got to give this one a D. I'm sorry, Aardman, but it really wasn't very funny. I mean, I understand. It's not even the fact that it's CGI. I know why they made it CGI, because with all the water, claymation was going to be difficult. But I didn't think the characters were especially memorable. Le Toad is not a very good villain. And so it didn't do much for me. Unfortunately, then we have to keep getting into more of a downer, because we have Shrek the Third. I'm going to give that an F. And admittingly, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with this one, because first of all, it's bad enough that it's not funny. Not really. And it's bad enough that it's not very entertaining. But when I worked at Fry's Electronics, this was a movie that we played on the TVs, and you had to watch it over and over and over again. And it was like for almost a year. And it's like, it's bad enough that it's a terrible movie, but then to cap it all off, I have to watch it so much that I've memorized every line. Oh, that's just terrible. So it's probably realistically a C or a D, but I have a personal gripe against that one, so that's why it's in the F category. B movie. This is a B movie. Of course, I'm going to make that joke because why wouldn't you? I mean, it's not bad. It's cute. Jerry Seinfeld has his little stand-up routine. It's got some funny visual gags. Storyline's really stupid when you stop and think about it. Like, I mean, it's stupid in some funny ways and then stupid in some bad ways. Like the human and the bee are kind of becoming a thing, which is kind of strange. But then he sues the honey makers and stuff for basically stealing their product. I mean, so there's issues with this movie, but overall, it's entertaining. It's entertaining, and that's why it's a little higher than it probably would have otherwise been. But there you go. So then you have Kung Fu Panda. Now, this is where Jack Black does sound like himself, but he's really good in it, and the movie's especially good. I'm putting this on an A, and yeah, this was actually, I think, a transitioning point for DreamWorks. I think they were starting to get to the point where they realized that putting a spoof on everything was just simply not working out. Kung Fu Panda was originally supposed to be a spoof on Kung Fu movies. And the directors asked Jeffrey Katzenberg, well, what if we actually made like a Kung Fu movie itself that just had some bits of humor in it? And so they apparently reworked the script. And so it was no longer spoofing Kung Fu movies. It was now a Kung Fu movie itself. And it ended up being really good. And it's also kind of funny to think that this was some of Dustin Hoffman's best acting work. So there you go. But then they went bad again with Madagascar, Escape to Africa. I didn't like this movie. I didn't like it at all. Like, it was definitely pointless. Characters were way more annoying than they were the first time around. I was basically done with the Madagascar movies at this point, but as you know, they made more. Then you have Monsters vs. Aliens. I'm going to put that under C. It's fine. It's cute. And I think this was like DreamWorks' first major 3D movie, so the 3D effects were really like in your face. So, and they were making a big, they were making a big deal about the 3D at the time, and it's fine. It's fine. I don't hate this movie. It's certainly watchable, but it's one of those things where, like, yeah, the more you think about it, the less you like it, though. So that's why it's there. Now, How to Train Your Dragon. Boy, do I love How to Train Your Dragon. I think I saw this movie 3 times in IMAX 3D because the experience was just so wonderful. Also, there was an IMAX 3D in Anaheim at the time. And I guess their contract with IMAX wasn't going well, so they just kept showing How to Train Your Dragon. I just kept going back to watch it because why not? Took my dad to see it, took friends. It's like it was wonderful. That was definitely where DreamWorks grew up, if you will. Now we get to Shrek Forever After, and even though it's not quite as good as the first two, it definitely had a very solid rebound. I think there's a lot to like about the 4th Shrek movie. And it's disappointing that a lot of people didn't see it because they saw Shrek the 3rd and they hated it so much that they just never bothered to see number 4. That is definitely a shame because I think there's a lot to like about Shrek Forever After. Really is. And my chinchilla mini is on her wheel if you start hearing that. You have Megamind. I enjoy Megamind quite a bit. I'm putting it under B. It's like, not instant masterpiece, but it's one that's definitely rewatchable. They kind of almost went back a little bit to the spoof type thing, but they didn't outright spoof superhero movies so much as they're like, well, what happens if the villain wins? Like, what does he do when he gets the world? And I thought that was a very interesting commentary idea. The idea that, of course, that the bad guy might actually get bored if the main hero. And then there was like some subversion with who the real villain was. So as I'm talking about this, I'm almost tempted to move it up one, but no, I'm going to keep it where it is. I think that this B is a perfectly fine place. I'm just going to keep it there. One of my favorites you haven't ranked yet. I know it's not popular opinion. Can't wait to see what you think. Well, I guess we will see what I think about it. So Kung Fu Panda 2, this is an S movie. That was definitely the high point for the Kung Fu Panda series. Talk about a step up from the story, talk about a step up from the character development, and the peacock, that Gary Oldman. Oh my gosh, there's so many examples you can find for animated films where it's like the movie is only as good as the villain sometimes. And even though Chow Long was a good villain, or is it Tai Long? I forgot. In Kung Fu Panda 1, boy, the peacock in Kung Fu Panda 2 was so much better. It really elevated the material. He was just, what great characterization with that. And Poe's journey almost comes full circle. It really does. It almost made me wonder, could Kung Fu Panda 3 get any better or be just as good? And I guess we'll find out in a little bit. So now we have the first, well, let's see here. Shrek, if it's seen, it's a bit better, but it's not by saying much. Well, I think it's actually considerably better than Shrek the Third. So then we have Puss in Boots. Puss got his own movie. I'm going to put it as a B. I do like the movie, and the funny thing is this movie came out the same year that Cars 2 came out, and both movies kind of showed the pros and cons that could happen when you take a side character and you give that side character their own feature film. Mater from Cars may have been the breakout character, but that character could not hold a movie to his own. He was absolutely annoying once you gave him all the screen time. Puss in Boots could carry a movie. Now, I didn't think the movie was great, but Puss in Boots was, like Shrek, a very good character, definitely able to hold his own, and some of the action sequences are really good. I was actually at the time hoping that it would be less of a comedy and more of an action movie, because I felt that the action sequences could differentiate themselves from the Shrek movies, which means we'll obviously talk about Puss in Boots 2 later on, which they do not seem to have appeared to put that on the list, but don't worry, I'll give it a grade anyway. So then we have Madagascar 3, and this one was easily the best. In fact, this one was good enough that it almost justified the first two movies being bad. In some, like, it doesn't really justify it. Like, they should have still been better than they were. But 3 closed the journey in a way where it's like, I was happy that I had taken it. And granted, the movie wasn't great for the most part, but then you get to the last 30 minutes where they actually managed to show up at a pivotal place that was important in the first film, and they're really reflecting on all on their journey and stuff. And it was like, wow, they really managed to make something emotional out of this final movie. So I give them props for that. Like, Madagascar 3 was a good way to end what was, in my opinion, a definitely below average series. Now, another movie that I'm going to give a B that I honestly was kind of surprised didn't do as well is Rise of the Guardians. I enjoy Rise of the Guardians. It's not perfect, but boy, this was like not even a comedy. Like, this, I think this was the first time since How to Train Your Dragon where it seemed like DreamWorks was actively trying not to make a comedy. And I love the animation. I saw it in IMAX 3 and it was like spectacular to watch there. And I am just always been a little confused. Like, why didn't this do very well? Like, it seemed like it should have had the word of mouth, but unfortunately it also shows that it's harder to sell an animated film on action and drama. Like, if you sell it as a comedy, oh, my kids like comedy and they'll go see it, but you sell something as an action or dramatic movie and it's animation, I I don't know. No, it just seems to have a hard time being sold to people. I also think that The Croods is a perfectly serviceable film. And yeah, I mean, Nicolas Cage was good in it, Emma Stone. I mean, I like the idea that this cave family basically is wandering looking for a new home, and the dad just keeps telling everyone stories where people die at the end, basically to discourage the family from going out on their own. And then this new guy played by Ryan Reynolds come in, and he's in some ways more modern, and he's got more hopeful stories. So, I thought that was all pretty funny. And now here's kind of an unpopular opinion. I think Turbo's pretty fun. I am not surprised it didn't do very well. Don't get me wrong. It's about a snail. I don't think a lot of people like snails, but that said, it's like a snail who wants to be a race car driver. That's not a terrible idea for a movie, and some of the race sequences were actually kind of fun, especially in 3D. So I personally like Turbo quite a bit. Now you have Mr. Peabody and Sherman. I think that's an average film. And I like the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons. And DreamWorks now owns the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons. So they own Rocky and Bullwinkle. They own Dudley Do-Right. They own the Fractured Fairy Tales, which is probably pointless since they have Shrek. And they own Mr. Peabody and Sherman. I don't know why they settled on Mr. Peabody and Sherman as their first movie to make from the Jay Ward catalog. Like Rocky and Bullwinkle is the obvious characters to make a movie off of, even though the first one didn't do that well financially. Dudley Do-Right would have been an even more inspired animated film, and you could have even hired Brendan Fraser to voice the character again, because for all the problems that the Dudley Do-Right movie had, Brendan Fraser was not one of the problems. Instead, they went with Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and it was a fine movie, not great, but it was fine. Now, How to Train Your Dragon 2. Yep, that's basically about as perfect as a movie can get. And what I really liked about this one is like how hard it was on the audience. Like, it had an ending that was brutal, and they were basically expecting kids to suck it up. Like, yep, this is the world. It's not always nice. Bad things happen. And so I was just very impressed with how they handled it. And it's like, well, there's no way that the third one could possibly top that, but I guess we'll see. I've got the Penguins of Madagascar, and I did not like this one. It's obviously not one of the worst, but the Penguins, here's a weird thing. The Penguins were always the best part about the Madagascar movies, but they made a lot more sense in small doses than they did carrying the film, because they didn't really have deep personalities, and the movie didn't give them deep personalities. There was really nothing at stake because the Penguins are always so skilled at what they do. So I think giving the Penguins their own movie was a bad idea. And ironically, it didn't do very well. So it seems like the public didn't really want a Penguins movie either, which is weird because people love the Penguins, but in movie form, it just didn't work. And unfortunately, DreamWorks still had some more struggles because Home was awful. Like, do I even remember what Home was about? I know it had a purple alien and this young girl, and the alien was really annoying. And like, oh, was that his name? See, that was such a forgettable movie. Yeah, if you had told me that this had come from DreamWorks, and after all of these movies, I was like so shocked. Like, how on earth did they let this happen? They should know better than this. Okay, then you get Kung Fu Panda 3, and yeah, it's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. It's not great. In fact, the frustrating thing about Kung Fu Panda 3 is like there were a lot of things that I believe they were building up that I thought were going to get answered in the third film, and they really didn't. It almost felt like a TV movie in some ways. Like the story was almost disconnected from the first two movies, and I don't know why they did that. I really don't. It did not make a lot of sense. All right, we're getting pretty close to the end here. Trolls. I really like Trolls. I don't know what to tell you. I really like Trolls. I like the songs. I like the colors. I love the animation. I love the characters. I love the way the conflict is solved. I even like the king, who is more lovable than he is evil. So I think Trolls was like a very, very pleasant surprise. Now, when you put it next to these movies, it's like, oh my God, what are you talking about? But it's like, yeah, it's just, it does something very specific, but it does that specific thing really, really well. All right, Boss Baby. This is probably DreamWorks' most infamous movie. I mean, this one I've got to give an F, right? I mean, it's it's just widely known this is a terrible movie, right? Except the thing is, I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's great either. I think this one sits squarely in the middle. And here's why it's even this high up. Alec Baldwin kills it in this performance. He is really good as the title Boss Baby. He really is. And if he were not voicing this character, I could have seen this movie being significantly worse than it is, because nothing about this should work. The storyline is nonsensical. The villain is annoying and not even very good. I don't even think the brotherly relationship is anything special, but Alec Baldwin as a baby in a suit is just so hilarious. And I'm assuming he wrote a lot of his own dialogue, because it's much better than most of the other dialogue from the other characters, that I think he basically saved this movie from being a total disaster. So I don't think The Boss Baby is terrible, but again, it's not great. But it's an average movie. But I know just by even suggesting that it's not the worst thing that DreamWorks has ever done, that's going to get a lot of comments below. So there you go. Now, Captain Underpants, I unabashedly love Captain Underpants. Like, again, like Trolls, when you put it next to Shrek and Ants and Curse of Were Rabbits, like, are you kidding me? But Captain Underpants is just plain fun. It is the most fun movie they have ever made. It is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot take it seriously, even a little bit, but you smile the whole time. And that ending song by Weird Al Yankovic is such an earworm. I had that thing on repeat for weeks after I saw the movie. So Coco is for winners. Yeah, oh yeah, look, I know what all that was referencing. I mean, the Boss Baby's still kind of average, but I definitely understand where you were coming from. But yeah, anyway, so Captain Underpants, I was, out of all of the DreamWorks movies that did not get a sequel, that was the most disappointing. Then you have How to Train Your Dragon 3, and it was not as good as 1 and 2, but it was pretty darn close. I thought this was a great way to end the trilogy, and it definitely left on a high note. This series did not overstay its welcome. I hear that they were originally planning to make 5 How to Train Your Dragon movies, and they decided to stop at 3 when they saw the box office ever so slowly going down. And, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly happy with 3 great movies than potentially 3 great movies and 2 mediocre ones. So is that the movie that you wanted me to grade, Captain Underpants, or was it The Boss Baby? I'm kind of curious to see which one you were most curious in seeing me grade, and if I graded along what you thought I should. All right, so we've got Abominable next. Is that what it is? Abominable? I think Abominable is, I'm going to put that under B. I think Abominable is fine. It's not super great in my opinion, but I really like the animation. This was also like more of a Pearl production, like DreamWorks set up Oriental DreamWorks, and then it became Pearl, and this was like their one movie together, and now Pearl is its own thing. So I thought it was a fine movie. It didn't have a lot of surprises. I suppose that's my biggest issue with that movie, but it's not bad by any means. And I'm gonna kind of go in the same way with Trolls World Tour. Fun fact: I'm one of the few people who saw this movie in theaters. We went to a drive-in theater during COVID and watched it on a drive-in movie theater screen, and it was fun. I mean, it was fun to get out of the house, that's for sure. It wasn't as good as the first Trolls movie. In fact, I thought the characters and the songs were kind of weaker, but overall, still fun. Boss Baby. I seem to be the only one who has fun and get glee from Boss Baby. Well, look, I like the Boss Baby itself. I just think like the movie has some very, very clear problems, but we still have Boss Baby 2 to get to. So now we have the second Croods movie, and I'm going to put that as a B as well. I mean, I think it's actually a better movie than Croods. It's just not a significantly better movie than Croods, so it's still in the B tier. But this was also one of those movies. I think COVID had theaters locked down in California, so me and my wife went to Vegas where the theaters were open. This was one of the movies we saw, and so it was fun. So if they never make another Croods movie, I don't think I'll lose any sleep over it, to be honest. But it was fun. Now here was a shocker that I didn't see coming. They made another Spirit movie. It was garbage. I didn't like it. Like, it was boring, and the animation was terrible. In fact, I am pretty convinced. I don't think this was ever confirmed, but I am almost certain that this was supposed to be like a TV movie to premiere the TV shows or direct to video, and they decided to put it in theaters just for the heck of it. It was not good, though, and it really had almost nothing to do with the first movie. I don't know why it was made. I know that there was a Spirit TV show that was created on Netflix, and I saw a few episodes of that, and for the record, I didn't think that was very good either. Now, if kids want to watch it, it's harmless, but, just show them the first Spirit movie at that point. So now the Boss Baby 2. I actually like the Boss Baby 2 a lot more than the first one, and the reasons are pretty obvious. First of all, the story is much better. I do think the brotherly relationship is dealt with in a much more logical way, adding in the new character, and it just, everything about this made more sense. Everything about this made more sense. And of course, Alec Baldwin is still doing the title character, and so it is a much, much better movie all around. But again, here's one of the bad things about the first movie being not very good, is that I don't think a lot of people saw the second Boss Baby because they saw the first one, really didn't like it that much, and why are they going to go see a second one, even though the second one is a much better product, in my opinion? So, I'm going to give a little bit of love for the Boss Baby 2 there, and, again, still not great. It's not like an A or anything like that, but, I enjoyed it. As for the bad guys, even though this is an absolutely cliched movie, I really enjoyed the bad guys. I actually even kind of like that for once, DreamWorks actually, with the exception of like Sam Rockwell, actually decided to get more underground voice actors who better suit the characters instead of like relying on celebrity gimmicks. And then, of course, they tried that new style of animation that was partially hand-drawn, partially CGI, and I loved it. I thought the effects were great. I thought they were absolutely great. And I loved it. That even though, again, the story is so cliche, it's so predictable. You know where it's going to go from pretty much right from the get-go. But it was such a fun movie. And the only movie now that is not here is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Now, if I were going to give a grade to Puss in Boots 2, and I'll give it anyway, even though we don't have the picture, I would put it up at S. I would put Puss in Boots right there, the sequel, that is. And because I think the second Puss in Boots movie was significantly better than the first one. They had that new style of animation. They actually did focus on the action and the drama. They shied away from the jokes for the most part. It was every bit better than the first one. The first movie, as cute as it was, seemed like a dress-up rehearsal for the second one. And that's how I feel about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's a shame that it's going up against Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, because it seems like this should have been the year where DreamWorks finally won another Oscar, but no, they're up against the Pinocchio movie, and that movie is, unfortunately for Puss in Boots, way better. So you should mention the Oscar nomination, because I've been doing the hypothetical Academy Awards for the voice actors, and Alec Baldwin did get a hypothetical Academy Award for Best Actor in Animated Film. And if I recall, I think he even won in that hypothetical contest. So I know what you're saying about that. But anyway, folks, so these are the rankings that I have for the DreamWorks movies. And some of those opinions are probably unpopular. It's actually really interesting that DreamWorks has a reputation for being Pixar light, like not as good. Like, Pixar makes the good movies, DreamWorks makes the strong movies. And yet there's very few movies that went in the F and D category, and only a few that went in the C. Most of them are B or higher. And when you look at the A's and the S's, I know Captain Underpants and Trolls might be debatable for some people, but hey, I really enjoyed them that much. It's like, yeah, DreamWorks is really good at what they do. They have made some excellent animated films, and I look forward to seeing what they make in the future. So anyway, folks, that is going to bring this episode of iCritic Live to an end. Do you agree with some of my choices? If not, what would you have rated them? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And if you're a Patreon member or a YouTube member, feel free to vote on those sites about what the next tier list should be. Take care and flame responsibly. Have a good one.